to the cloud. Okay.
Right. And you're the only one who can record it, I think, Martina. It has to be the host.
Yeah. No, I think you can record it too. I'm recording now, so
well, I'd have to get your permission.
Okay. Okay.
Oh yeah, it says please request a recording permission from the host.
No permission. No permission. I don't give permissions.
Okay. I don't know what that involves, but it obviously isn't enough if you say yes, so it's not recorded.
So we are recording, and welcome to another installment of our Exploring Consciousness. We've got 4 ladies here, including myself here, yes. And we've got a question: who or what is rattling your isolation cage? So I don't know if we're going to have some more people join us. We'll see, probably not. So otherwise, we're just going to take it from there, and we're just going to kick it off with any questions, anything that comes up when we ask that question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think we've got a perfect storm for the rattling of cages and for triggers in the isolation situation, haven't we?
So
and I think it applies whether you're living on your own or living with others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot of the instant gratification has been removed, a lot of the diversions aren't there, and some of the release valves aren't there. So you could say some of us can be in pressure cooker situations.
What has been your situation? Is there anything that has been coming up, or clients that have come to you about it, or anything that's come to your awareness?
Yeah, a client with a difficult partner prone to depression, and the fear has, come up, risen its head, and she finds that difficult because she's, like me, quite sort of positive and able to mostly maintain sacred neutrality, but I think even she gets pushed over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
So, and goes into polarity and then loses it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, that's what I'm talking about, the release of pressure.
Yeah.
And yeah, we chatted for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you saying that actually before we came on here, I was listening to Al Jazeera's news, which is worldwide reporting, and they were talking about India really having a lot of trouble with domestic violence since they're all stuck in the same place.
Yeah.
This was a lady talking. She was working for a charity for women with domestic abuse, and she said it is an explosive situation now because of the stress, because of the lack of income, for the women to deal with the lack of money in order to make enough food for everything, and then having, abusive guys at home, partners at home. So it's quite an issue, isn't it? In addition to all the other stuff that's going on.
Yes, because I think mental health is one of the things that isn't always looked at in situations like this. And it's so important to try and maintain that balance. And I think it is all too easy, I've done it myself under these situations to lose it at times. However well-intentioned you are, the people you're closest to are the ones you tend to be living with, and they're the ones who can push your buttons. So it takes a lot of work to keep yourself in that neutrality. And I don't, we do all get into a polarized situation now and again. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't. Sometimes that does release it and then it goes. But I think, what you're talking about, India and so on, is certainly that's the extreme.
Yeah, and that is an extreme example there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these women have nowhere to go, and it's easier for us to say, step into your own potency and look into how can you empower yourself, compared to situations there, which is a completely different way of interaction still, I suppose.
Yeah, it's much more draconian. and it's more patriarchal, isn't it? So it's a very difficult one to give advice from here.
It's also a very heavily populated country, so you might find that there's a lot of people living together in the same house.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So you just wouldn't have your own energies to deal with, or just one other's, but all of the people living in your house. I think it brings up to, you know, the whole idea of how we unconsciously balance ourselves all the time with the person that we live with. And we do that without even thinking. And when there's this lockdown and we're kind of forced to spend our time together with somebody and share our space with somebody, it can bring up that whole idea of, oh my God, you know, I didn't realize that this really was going to get on my nerves so much. Or so you're constantly rebalancing until you sort of sort it out. Not that it's ever sorted.
It's almost a bit like, you know, this tacit consent that we've allowed. It's a bit like that frog, isn't it, simmering in the pan and the water is not hot enough, so it's okay, and now that the water is heating up, you know, the flames are high. And it's quite amazing how it takes a virus, right?
Yes.
Bringing up all that shit, and there's so much else going on, you know, along this, you know, those cages are really getting rattled, you know. It's crazy.
Yes, and you know, if you're used to having your own space, and we have been, because we've created it one way or another, you know, through work or through how we even live at home with the people that we live with, we have created a space that has been manageable. And now all of a sudden that's just tested, because now all of a sudden there's people in that space all the time, even if it's only one other person. And, you know, even for the best of us, I think there are times that can be difficult or can be challenging.
So how can we, what sort of tools can we offer people in order to get through a situation like that, where it is difficult to get out? What types of tools are you guys using, or are you aware of that we can offer people when, you know, the shit does hit the fan? And, you know,
I think realizing it and sort of creating a kind of fluidity around it helps. I think if we have expectations that it's going to be a particular way and it isn't, you know, there's disappointment. But I suppose if we kind of try to realize it and just go with the flow, it does help it a bit.
Yeah, recognize it as it's coming in. I mean, I can feel, well, everybody can, you know, you can feel when things aren't right within the household. And it's almost preempting it, isn't it? And recognizing what's coming in. For me, I create sort of sacred boundaries and have my own time. You're not always able to do that. If you're in a house with a busy family, your probably only escapism is to go and have a bath for half an hour. If you can get that amount of privacy. You know, you know, so in busy families, how do parents get their time together with children in the house? You know, okay when they're in bed, but if you want sexual time together, intimate time together, you know, all these things can throw up problems in isolation. But yes, for me, the setting of boundaries, having my time, my space that is not interfered with and stepped on. But I'm not in a difficult situation, but you can see how people with big families or abusive situations, as we were saying, it can be extremely difficult for them. I mean, you shouldn't have to lock yourself in a room to get some of your own space or to feel safe.
Yeah, but and this is a, you know, part of a bigger conversation here, isn't it? Because what is this virus actually doing? This virus is pointing something out to us. It's almost like facilitating everything that doesn't really work. I mean, we can see how the economy is falling apart, how the corruption is being pointed out, how our interaction with, you know, the people we live with is getting pointed out and stuff like that. So from that perspective, you know, it's all really an interesting and very interesting evolution.
Well, it's highlighting where things are out of balance.
Yeah.
And the virus is here for one thing, it's here to bring balance, isn't it? So
yeah,
it really is bringing up where things are in balance, aren't in balance, so that you can then make choices.
So let's throw that word in. Let's throw that in, because, you know, some of us here on this call, we call this a karmic retribution virus.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what does that mean? All the unresolved karma, if you wish, all the crap that we have not allowed ourselves to look at is pretty much being thrown into our faces now. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to get it and we have to, you know, suffer from the virus itself, but everything that surrounds it is being, you know, triggered as an opportunity for us to look at it.
Yeah, to resolution in situations and things,
And sometimes, you know, when you think of karmic resolution, you know, the first thought is about karma that you might have with other people or with the people that you share your life with. But it can also be in relation to karma with yourself. Times in the past that maybe you weren't exactly true to yourself and your true self, and you didn't always stand up for yourself or turn up for yourself, and you might be back in situations where that's demanded of you now. That might be the karma, which is more difficult to spot maybe, because it's not as obvious.
Yes, and what if our relationships are such a perfect, you know, indicator and way of showing us that, you know?
Yes, yes.
You know, seeing ourselves through the relationship with others, you know?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's throw an access tool in this one, because access consciousness is Gary Douglas. If anybody wants to look that up, we're going to mention that. Is one of those modalities which has really amazing pragmatic tools. And one of those tools which comes to mind here, and maybe Jill can think of something else too, she's also a practitioner, but, you know, the interesting point of view, I just want to, you know, raise that and throw that in. So for anyone who is dealing with a lot of controversy within the relationship, within the family, the tool is just using interesting point of view. And what that means is, like, you're having an argument with somebody and you don't agree, and instead of actually starting to have a huge, you know, back and forth, just use interesting point of view and say to yourself, well, that's an interesting point of view that he or she has that point of view. And you just keep repeating that in your mind's eye. You don't have to say it loudly. And what happens is you're actually changing, Laura, you mentioned polarity, you're changing the energetic charge from polarity into duality, if you wish. Because the difference between polarity and duality is the charge, the energetic charge. Duality is something we are living with, being in bodies, being on this planet, but we don't have to have the charge attached.
Yes.
As soon as you run the interesting point of view, that's a really, I mean, I don't know if the Indian ladies, if that's enough for them, but it's us, you know, we can use that interesting point of view, this point of view, and that really, really makes a difference.
I remember when I was coming up to situations involving potential arguments and could feel myself getting stressed at something I learned years ago, and something will come up in my mind, and I'd see it as, I can choose peace. I think actually it's somebody like Neil Donald Walsh or Wayne Dyer, but it's from a long time ago. But I used to train myself to think I can choose peace. But of course, the other part of me will come up sometimes and say, well, you can choose peace, but you're not going to today. Because I have to get this point across.
Exactly.
I don't know how I do. So I can choose peace, can just take a back seat. But it did used to work at times.
Yeah, it's a conscious choice as opposed to a reaction.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely.
So, exactly, choice. So what else can I choose here? And stay in the question, you know, what else can I choose here? Instead of going into, you know, full on aligning and agreeing, resisting and reacting, just stay in the question. What else can I choose here? I had a bit of a domestic with my daughter the other day, and I just didn't go into alignment and agreement. You know, I said something, she said something back. She wanted to involve me into a hick hack, and I thought, nah, not with me. And it just dissolved. It took some time for her to, you know, but because it wasn't going into the drama, into the story, it just sorted itself out.
Yeah.
But this is where people so need to do their inner work and their self-healing, because we've been, all four of us, doing this a while, and so we can start to make choices before things occur, and get really heated most of the time. Hopefully we all make, you know, the choice of more peace. But there's people who haven't done the inner work and the healing, and of course these things, the longer this isolation goes on, the more these things are just going to build and build. So it really is time for people who want a more peaceful life, and they've got to take time out for themselves and start to investigate themselves and their own reactions and actions and choices they make.
Yeah.
Yes, and also, you know, if you look at the four of us, you know, we've done this work. We're all therapists, we're all, you know, healers and that type of stuff. But also, it takes responsibility. It's not an easy thing. I mean, I know all of us getting together and say, hey, can you facilitate me, because I'm in a rut at the moment. I need to get out of this, you know. And it's really important to allow yourself to be vulnerable and reach out to somebody. I mean, there's a reason why we're doing these Zooms, you know, for people to call in and say, hey, I've got a problem. What can you help me? Or just actually reaching out for help is already making the difference.
Or even just to reach out to talk about it, because sometimes people can feel very isolated and they think they're the only ones, and that it's only them who can't cope. And there's a sense of shame about it, and they don't really want to show that side of themselves, that, you know, that they're finding this difficult. And sometimes talking to somebody who says, look, I understand, I know what you're talking about, I do understand, and that they can hear their struggle, it can help them a lot, and it can give them the confidence then to go on with it. And maybe, I think after a while, when people, you know, engage in the emotional charge, and that happens over time, that even if they're not that aware of what they're doing, after a while there's a kind of a natural process to it where they get very tired of it, and they begin to realize, do you know what, I'm not doing this anymore, this is just wearing me out, so I'm just going to ignore this. And they can reach that stage themselves sometimes, just from just their own process in it.
I suppose one of the first things for people to learn, as well as the sovereignty, is the heart-spaced awareness. Because once you start to bring that into your life, that makes a lot of difference in how you react and act towards things.
So say a little bit about heart-spaced awareness, what that actually means for people who don't know what that means.
So, I mean, so many of us just operate without thinking, like we just, you know, react, and it all sort of comes from the brain. And for me, heart-spaced awareness is where I bring my presence, I bring my mind, my brain, if you like, down to my heart. And I can only do that through visualization. So that's how I see it, coming into my heart. And sometimes I bring my picture of my face as well to my heart and create a sort of an I am awareness. So I'm pulling from, you know, I'm pulling in my energy into myself, and I find it very grounding. I found it very stabilizing, and I think we've all called it before, working from our heart mind, to give the the balance to the analytical side of the brain, to bring in the heart side. I'm sure you can, describe that better than me, Martina.
Yeah, no. Well, no. Let's hear it from somebody else. Gillian, what does it mean to you, heart-based discernment? Because it's nice to have different takes.
Yeah, I guess it's just the not reacting. They're taking that moment to be responsible for your actions, and for it not to be a reaction. And just, the other person is doing the best they can. And also some of the tools that we were talking about the other day, what you mentioned is that my favorite tool is everything is the opposite of how it appears. And in most sort of situations where there's a misunderstanding, it's normally the opposite of how you perceive it. So just trying to be more open-mindedness about what is really the issue, what really is the trigger.
Mary, what do you got?
Yes, I suppose I'm just listening to you there. Sorry, I'm just fiddling a little bit here with my sound. Am I coming across very loudly, or is the sound okay?
Perfect.
Okay. What I got, I suppose, when you said it first, and I'll go with what I got when you said it first, was that sense of how I would relate differently when I'm relating from the heart. I relate, I think, out of much more compassion. And in the end, it's compassion for myself, to be honest, because you can have all the compassion in the world for everybody else, but if you can't have it for yourself, it's just not coming from a good place in you. And sometimes I have found, just in my own life, if those difficult situations, and if I stop and say to myself, I have so much compassion for myself right now. This is so difficult. That is so empowering. Even just to say that, it is so empowering. And it takes the energy back in, just that I can look at myself in that situation. I can't change it, but it helps me just to be able to do that.
No, that's lovely. Heart-based discernment for me means speaking my truth. That comes from here. Not from here, not even from the throat. Well, there's a connection there, but from here. And it could come out harsh. It could come out unkind, because, it always depends who you're talking to, how they perceive what you're saying. But when it comes from here, and I trust what comes out, and it comes from my heart, then it comes with a clarity and with a non-polarity, that whatever the words are, the energy comes through, that it's almost like, okay, it is what it is. It's just her point of view from that perspective. Because, it's a lot of how it's the frequency, a lot, the way we communicate with each other. And if there's a clarity in my heart based expression, then it is usually perceived either with a nod, or at least not being misunderstood in a way.
Yes.
I think it very much your authenticness comes through.
Yeah,
authentic awareness.
Yeah. And when somebody is authentic, if you know people that are authentic, there's nothing you can say, because it's like, they're authentic, it's their perspective, it's their point of view. Why would I even want to change that? And I was thinking earlier on, if we all go with our heart-based discernment, with our authentic voice, all four of us would already have a different perspective, would have a different point of view. And then at some stage, we could start trading those points of views, right? On the open, because we were talking about trading time and all sorts of things. And I thought, why don't we trade points of views? Like, for instance, we
unlimited
facilitate a whole bunch of people, and we say, hey, this is my point of view. Do you want to pay for that? No. Okay. Point for, and stuff like that, because it's worth something.
Yes, and it could be so much fun.
Oh, putting a different spin and having a different truth, because
Yes.
more truths the better, so we have bloody choice, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's so interesting, that whole idea of, everybody is speaking their truth.
This is the thing we were saying last time. There is this, I called it an oxymoron, because in a way it is. We're having our unique, authentic individuality that we are now going to be invited to express, and at the same time, we are trying to integrate it into a conscious community, right?
Yes.
Now, that is exciting.
Mm.
Really, it takes away.
Sorry, could you say that again? I missed that.
Say again? What was
I
that?
just missed what you said there, Martina.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can remember.
No, that's okay.
No, I said
Integrating it into society, I think.
Yes, yes.
our unique, authentic perspective being integrated into a conscious community. And what does that require? It requires us all allowing ourselves to be authentic in our expression. If people like it or not, know that, if ever they have a problem with you, it's their problem, not yours anyway, to be honest. And then the community that we're starting to create is a conscious community, because the conscious community is different to the corrupt community, to the polarized community. It's a conscious community which doesn't have a point of view what your opinion is. They take it as an interesting point of view, as another choice. It's just another choice. Which they don't have to choose. They don't have to make it personal.
Yes. So there's no judgment in it, from what I'm hearing.
There's no judgment. Yeah.
Yes. Everything is okay.
That doesn't have to be a judgment in duality.
Yes.
Duality does not judge.
Yes.
Polarity does, because of the attached energetic. But if you let go of the energetic that is attached to the memory, you're back into interesting point of view and choice.
Yes.
And the main thing is you have no resistance, because it's the resistance that keeps us out of creation, that keeps us out of choice.
Yes.
It's that. So yeah, interesting.
Yes, very interesting.
So of course, the other thing now, what's the opposite of that? We were saying people living together. Now we've got the opposite, everything's the opposite of what it appears to be. We have the people who are living on their own.
And can't face themselves.
And can't face themselves.
Away either. Yeah.
Yes, and I have had
lots of people being isolated, not choice. Well, everything is a choice. We create our reality. Consciously having chosen it, and they're struggling too.
Oh yeah.
I have had some contact with some people living on their own through the counselling centre where I work. We have a helpline, and some of those people that are living on their own are actually very afraid right now. There's more fear in that community than people who are sharing their life with somebody.
So Mary, what are they?
They're very afraid of what they're going to get, and if they're going to get the virus, and they're just afraid of, and they live for the phone calls.
They live what? With phone calls?
They live for these phone calls. They just think that, the phone call and the chat with somebody is wonderful.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, they're just afraid that on their own they're going to have to look at themselves.
Yeah.
I
think that's also a big fear, isn't it?
Well, there's no distraction. We mentioned that before, isn't it? Distraction is one of the biggest culprits in not doing the inner work. Because it's so much easier to go into drama and to look at other people's stuff than going deeply inside and looking at your own.
And that's almost a bigger fear than the virus.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I don't... Sorry, carry on.
No, I'd finished. I was going on to say what will be some of the tools we could give these people, other than the heart-based awareness, but particularly people living on their own, because they're not looking at triggers from other people they live with, but there's also triggers from mainstream media.
Reaching out, get them back, have a conversation with somebody, and be open to really go vulnerable and discuss your things. And
yes.
Somebody who doesn't align and agree and says, yes, you're so poor and I feel sorry for you, but actually find somebody who's more of a facilitator type and an empowerer, who says, look, Schnockley, you might be on your own now, but what other possibilities do you have here? You know, what's
yes,
right
what
about
can you
that?
do with this time?
Exactly. And, you know, if you've never done anything like that, then they might need a follow-up call and a couple of those calls, you know.
Where do you suggest you point people in sort of direct, if they never looked at themselves and they've never been there, how do you sort of introduce it?
Interesting question.
I also could ask them, maybe, Gillian, what kind of feelings were coming up for them. Because usually if you kind of track the feelings, it's a great route into how they are in themselves and on their journey. Feelings are very authentic.
Okay, yeah.
And it could be bringing up a huge amount of childhood stuff as well.
Yes, would be that. Yes, and that would come up, you see, in the feelings, you know. But sometimes you have to kind of slowly track them back.
Well, clearly people like that need contact, need therapeutic counseling type thing.
Yeah.
You know, obviously where we're coming from, they need empowerment.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
But they need somebody to, at least in the beginning, to give them a couple of tools, you know, and then.
So which tools would other than the interesting point of view, because when you trapped on your own, you just get into a loop, and fair enough, you can do the interesting point of view, but like where do you go next?
Okay, so routine comes in here.
Okay.
And you know, you all ladies know me, I'm not a routine chick at all, but when I put myself, you know, slightly in that space, then I would say routine is, and also actually, let me use my example. She's 94, she is by herself, and before the virus, she used to go out, you know, go for a walk and everything. And she's the one, bless you.
Bless you, Gillian.
Thank you.
She's still the one having the garden service in. And I quite like the way she does it. Initially, I thought, oh, woman, what are you doing? Isolation, all that. But she's got a separate garage. So it's easy. The guy comes through the garage, does his thingy, and then leaves again. I don't think she ever sees him. She probably just leaves the money there and that's it. But the thing is, she doesn't go into fear. She makes sure that her garden is in pristine, you know, order at the moment. I can hear through the wall. She's listening to her TV. So it's routine for her, you know.
Yes.
And I think that's quite useful for people. Even myself. I mean, you know, what do? I do my yoga sessions. They're doing virtually now. I'm doing this Zoom on a weekly basis. I'm going for a walk once a week, you know, and so I'm knitting. You know, it's also, you know, occupying yourself, but that's not necessarily distraction as such.
No, it's not.
No.
It's actually, you know, using your time and being positive about stuff, and the main thing for me is being in the question. What else is possible here? What can I do with this? You know, it's almost like, okay, there's one thing. You're never on your own.
Yeah.
You're never on your own. As long as you're in your body, you're never on your own.
Yes. Yes.
So start talking to your body. People who are lonely, you have to start talking to your body. And you'll never get tired of your bodies. What do they want to eat? When do they want to have a bath? what do they want to do right now, you know, and stuff like, what do you want to wear? And this is one of the biggest things out there, to start establishing a relationship with your body, because most people do not know that they actually have a body, but they are not their body.
Yes.
Just because you have a body doesn't mean you are the body. No, you've chosen the body. That's your vehicle of experience, and the communication needs to work, and then you're never on your own.
Yes. Yes. You can write to yourself. I was saying you could write to yourself, Martina, like as in journaling. It's a good project to have if you want to try to do something to fill your day. You know, or recording yourself. Yep. And then maybe listening to them at the end of the week or the end of the month, and hear yourself and hear how your voice sounded on a particular day for a particular recording. It might only be 2 or 3 sentences, but there's a lot that you can do, I think. But I think people go into a kind of a rut where they feel aimless and they don't know what they're going to do with this expanse of day that's in front of them, and then it goes into a week, and then it goes into a month, and it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do with all of this time? I have nobody in my life, and all this fear comes up. And maybe to put structure on the day I think is a great help, even to me sometimes. So it might be good to have some sort of a focus as to what you might try to do that day. And if you don't do it, it doesn't matter. But it might be just something that you might do, or you might get around to.
A strategy.
Yeah, and it's just so much distraction. Spiritual, yeah, it's more an aim and a focus.
If you're one of these people who doesn't like the word strategy, who doesn't like structure, then call it commitment. Call it commitment to yourself.
Exactly. Yes, that's a nice.
Be committed to your body. Your body wants you to be with it. Him, her, whatever.
Yeah. And also joy. I know it can be quite difficult, you know, to go from being in a depressed state to find some sort of joy, but maybe a stepping stone is to find something you like doing. And something creative. Mary's talking about journaling, but whether it's knitting or anything that gets you in that zone where you're feeling pleasure.
So what's the antidote for depression, if you wish, or fear, or anything negative emotion, as we call them, is gratitude.
Gratitude and prayer as well.
Easier said than done.
Yes.
Jelly Willy, gratitude practice every day. Oh, I've got something to write. I'm so grateful. Oh, I got a cup of tea. I'm so grateful. Even if you're like this, practice.
Yeah. I have been working on it. It hasn't come easy.
It's even in the beginning. I know in the beginning it's like meditation and all that type of stuff, but this is the commitment. The strategy, if you wish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's usually what happens, what people lose, I think, when they're living on their own and they go into that state of fear. Because to go back to your neighbor, Martina, like she has lots of plans for every day and lots of things she wants to get done. And she wants to, you know, watch the news and update herself at some stage during the day. And I think that's, you know, she sounds like she has a great life. She's not, it doesn't matter to her what age she is. She could be 74.
She's hugely inspirational lady. And what else she's got? Self-value.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it self-love because that is such a
overused.
But self-value.
Yes.
After herself. She's, you know, she's looking not just after the garden. The garden is just an extension of what she's doing inside the house. Her house is in perfect order. You know, she is always, when you see her in the garden, she looks fantastic. She's got a little thingy on and her scarf, and you know, her hair is done, and fantastic.
Yes.
And
And
hey, how difficult is it now for us? I'm dressed today because it's Wednesday. Zoom, even
I haven't washed my hair for a week.
And every day in the morning I'm thinking, hey, you can get dressed and look nice, and you've got so much hanging about, you know, why don't you wear it? It doesn't matter if anybody sees it or not, right?
Yes.
I do find some people aren't living for the moment and embracing the moment. So part of them is still, their head's still at work. So some of them are still in the job where they went to, and some have parts of them that are in the job or when they're going back to work, and everything that they're almost, I find, not completely in their body. So they're off somewhere else, just functioning. It's almost, you know, like the parasympathetic and sympathetic are running the body, and they are somewhere else, or, you know, this is what I'm going to do when I get back to work, or when can I get back to work, because their whole structure and framework of support is their job, or they're identified by their job. So this is a huge watershed for them, and suddenly they're home, and actually saying to them, you know, you've got time now to do the things, some of the things, hopefully, that you weren't able to do before. I know there's limitations on what we can do. There's also a lot of things you can do while you're at home in this state, as we've been talking about, in this isolation. So people need to bring themselves back, as we were saying, into their body, to be here now, isn't it? To be in the present moment, rather than always planning something in the future, where they to almost rush this time away so they can get back to their job that makes them feel secure again.
So you've
That's
just,
I think that,
yeah, you've just opened a huge topic there. That's got, you know, so let's follow up with a question for anybody who has been working 9 to 5, or, you know, around that time, and who had to go to work, get on the tube and get on the bus and do all that, and is now working from home. And the question would be, what percentage do you actually find yourself being in the body?
yeah,
Like what Laura said. And this is a slightly, you know, we're being called forth to look for our multidimensional perspective here with this virus that's come in. Okay, so we can't just pretend anymore that we're these little humans and we're going to work and we have sex and then we eat something and then we go to bed. It doesn't work anymore. We have to start introducing the multidimensional perspective. So what Laura just said is, like, when you're no longer going to work physically, you've been doing this pretty much for 40 years or 20, whatever, you are energetically, your light body is still going to work. So your physical body might be sitting on this desk at home thinking, doing work at home, and yes, but the light body is still going to work. So there's a huge discord between physical and light body, which is highly confusing.
yeah,
So being in the moment is almost impossible.
yeah,
When you have such a complete disparity between your physical and your other bodies. So it's very difficult, but, you know, nobody thinks about that. So just looking at that and actually saying, okay, so that's a habitual pattern. How can I break this habitual pattern? And it takes a little bit of time, but the acknowledgement itself is the beginning. And say, okay, so I'm at home now, so let me be here 100%. And it's not going to work because nobody's ever 100% in their bodies anyway. But what can I do in order to be more in my body? And, you know, you ladies, you're doing the yoga with me. I always ask the question in the beginning, how much are we in the bodies? And then at the end of the session, feel the difference.
yeah.
Because physical movement is one of the ways of getting into the body. And it might be even just making a couple of star jumps. So when people go into, oh my God, drama, this and that, just get moving. And you don't have to go out for a big walk. You can jump, or and get yourself back into the body. That brings you immediately back into the present moment. And of course, there's the breath.
Yeah.
We breathe, nobody pays attention. As soon as you take your attention to your breath, you're already in the body. And are we having this conversation? Yes. So, so this is a big thing. This is a big thing now. That lots of people who have worked in the city, in big cities, and no longer going to the cities, that they're still having their light bodies sitting at the desk at work. I know it sounds wacky, but that doesn't allow them to fully be in the moment and to fully actually interact with their families. So another reason why lots of people actually have issues in their families and relationships, because the people are physically there, but not mentally, not emotionally.
No.
Energetically.
That's right. So you get the same old condition.
And that is so annoying.
Yeah.
It's so annoying when you talk to somebody and he or she is here and they don't interact.
Yes.
It is frustrating.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
And then they just, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, and then obviously, subconsciously they're trying to somehow spin it around, and then it's just a lot of fucking lies and I was like, oh. And all you're actually doing, you're perceiving that person not being present. And one thing, as we're talking about multidimensional stuff, is guess what, guys? If you're not in the body, guess who is in the body?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah?
Yeah. Do you know?
Friend sign. As soon as you get the hell out of your body, there's so many beings out there, so many energies who would love to have a body. A second one like ours, in you go.
Yeah.
So,
and that's when the arguments start as well.
That's when the arguments start. That's when the anger comes in. That's when all this entity stuff starts coming up. And we were talking about entities the other day, and we just mentioned the thought forms that gone awry, but of course there is a multitude of other entities out there that have nothing to do with thought forms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And when you then start dealing with those, you got a problem. Laura, you know about that.
Yes, if you want to go on to that, happy to. I was just going to say another angle on that one is to get into creativity, because when you're focusing on something you really love, then you're going to be bringing more of yourself in. So rather than you're having selves in the future, if you're getting into, whether it's, fiddling on your motorbike or building something out of wood, you're going to be there and much more present once you get into some sort of creativity. And then when you really get into something, it's you're in no time anyway, aren't you? You can be doing something, and you feel it's only taken a few minutes and you could have been there hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
And be aware.
Hobbies are, if they can identify the hobbies, because they'll enjoy that. They'll enjoy spending time with whatever the hobby is.
Yeah.
And I actually think, just for myself, I often did some of my best inner work when I was actually engaged in a hobby, like painting a picture. I wouldn't really be, I'd be present to the picture, but it's amazing all the other stuff that would be running through my mind and my emotions while I'd be at that was unconscious. I wasn't that aware of it. But when I look back on it now, I do realize that I can actually do a lot of work and a lot of sorting out in myself if I'm painting a room, for instance. All I have to do is decide on the paint and get a roller, and the rest just happens. My body will turn up and do that. But it's what I'm doing emotionally while I'm doing that it can be a great way of processing, rather than sitting with something. There's this thing of sit with yourself, and that never sat with me. I had to be always doing something, and in doing that I could process.
So Mary, what you're saying here is actually you're giving yourself a focus, okay?
Yeah.
frankly, we are compulsive creators. You create constantly, and even if you don't create, you still create. You create creation.
Yeah.
Don't focus it in a certain direction with a certain intention, with an attention. You're still creating, but very often you start creating crap.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's whether you're creating an awareness or unawareness, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's the secret to doing the hobby, because I think when you're doing something you like, your energy, you're on a higher vibration. You're enjoying yourself. You're in a good place. And I think that when you're doing something like that, you will work at a higher level in your internal world, because your internal world is always there anyway and always present.
Yeah.
And I think people now, the longer the isolation goes on, are going to be forced to let go of the thought that they, you know, can be going back to work next week or the week after.
Yeah.
There'll come a time where they might actually let go of that, step out of this Roman numeral time. I know that's a whole big subject, as you said, Martina, on its own, and then start to embrace some of the free time they now have to do this creativity. And then the more they do it, the more they are going to disconnect from the outside job, from the 9 to 5, from the time that's, you know, makes up our life, the Roman numeral time that controls so much of what we do. I don't know how many of you really look at the clock in the day. I mean, I know we've been doing this for a while, but I don't. I, you know, have my morning coffee when I feel like I want a morning coffee. You know, lunch could be 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I'm so much more relaxed about everything else. And I'm sure.
Don't you think it's quite interesting that this is what everybody's always said they've wanted? Everybody at work's always gone, oh, I want more time. I want to do this. And now it's been given. Like everybody always goes on Monday. Oh, I wish the weekend was longer.
Yeah.
Now it is.
Yes, exactly. Now they have it, Gillian, and you know it can be quite scary.
Yeah.
As it goes on, because people say, "Oh God, when is life going back to normal? When are we going to go back to normal?" And that's a very interesting question. Normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what if the normal? No, I don't want to say this. This is not a question for this chat, but I think early. It's too early for people to, and I see it for myself at times, because it's almost like too early for people to understand that everything is going to change.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, you're being led on by the government. Okay, well, maybe we're gonna lift the sanctions in a week's time. No, in another week. So it's almost like everything is very preliminary yet, you know.
Yeah, it's still early.
Right. But then all of a sudden you do hear a comment. Well, we're thinking 60,000 people dead in the UK by August. And I'm like, what? Did you just say that? But nobody heard that.
No.
That's a completely different situation than, you know, 60,000. Wow. Now we're talking, that makes a bit more sense what he's saying, but he only said that once. That you don't hear that all the time. Because if you really heard the truth, okay, it's difficult again, because who knows what the truth is? It is a novelty virus, and we do not know how it mutates. We do not know. But this is where the heart-based discernment comes back in again, where, you know, you have an opportunity to inform yourself, and there is amazing sources out there where you can actually not just look at mainstream media and say, okay, so what do all the different people say? And then you choose, and that's what we do, right?
So, okay.
With, you know,
follow what you
virus and that. We also have our sources, but we don't just rely on one source. I mean, I'm on all the different sites, and I just choose, okay, this makes sense, what this person's saying, this makes sense, and then I make up my own story for myself. And if you can do that, and that's called taking responsibility and finding your own truth.
Yes.
So many people don't want to take that responsibility, and so many people are going to be pushed into doing it.
You know, I think they don't know how, because as Martina was saying earlier, it's too early for a lot of people.
They haven't let go of the
don't know what to do. They almost need like a set of instructions as to how will I navigate this time. And actually, I think that the fact that it's just, you know, it could be for another week and then for another week, it does keep people on tenterhooks that they're probably going to be getting back. So they don't apply themselves really to trying to, you know, find themselves and fill up their own space at home. If they knew that it was for a month, they may react differently. They may say, well, listen, we're here for a month, you know, I'm going to have to do something. So we have to, whatever. I always just start with the hobbies, because I think that it's a great place for people to start if they haven't done anything before, and if it's too scary, you know, painting the house or renovating and all of that can really ground them as well and bring them into their bodies.
Yeah, I was asking the question, what do I know? Because what does the government know?
Yeah.
Sorry for the guys, to be honest, because they're being on the spot there to tell us what to do and how to do it. They don't know either. They're just people like you and I.
Yes. They don't know, and it's good to realize that. But again, I don't think everybody would realize that. You know, they hang on to what the government are saying because that's what they have always done.
Well, I don't know. The government's not even doing what the government says. There's 2 ministers now that have resigned because was one in New Zealand and another one where they were told stay at home, and then the ministers didn't stay at home.
Yeah.
So they give advice, but they can't.
One the healthy one.
Yeah.
Yes,
It'll be
I know.
interesting to have this forum in a couple of months' time.
Again?
It will be interesting to have this forum and discussion in a couple of months' time, looking how the people around us have changed. Those who think, or even longer than that, those who think, oh, we'll be going back in, you know, May or June. And if we're still not, if things aren't back, say back as they were, but if people aren't back to work by September, how different are people going to be?
So, okay, so since we haven't got anybody out there who wants to ask us any questions at this stage, what do we know? What is the new normal for us then? The new normal.
Not getting out of bed till 9 o'clock.
What was that?
Not getting out of bed till 9 o'clock in the morning.
I'm already doing that. What else?
I suppose for me, it's I have lost track of time, of Roman numeral time. I do have to think, what day of the week is it, even what time of the day is it? And I have to stand up sometimes and think, well, is it Wednesday or is it Tuesday? And that's absolutely wonderful. And I have lost all track of work and where I worked and the people that I've worked with. It's just like that happened about a century ago. And it does seem like that. Like I'm off work since the 12th of March. And I have to say, that's 3 weeks tomorrow. It does feel like at least 3 months, at least. Wow. Yeah. And that's good. That's not that it has felt long and boring. That has felt long and fulfilled and really excited about having time to just be with myself and be with whatever, nature and all of that.
I've learnt I can grow seeds.
Yeah.
I can plant out a wheelbarrow. I didn't know that. I've learned all sorts of things just in how many weeks have we been on lockdown here? 2, 3?
I think 2.
Is it 2 weeks? Just it's 2 weeks. Okay. So so much. I've learned so much. I'm so much more relaxed. I would never, I don't think, in the evening have gone for a walk, but now I go, at sunset. I mean, locally, I haven't really explored what's on my doorstep. I've always got in the car and gone somewhere. And I'm very fortunate where I live that, I could walk for an hour and a half and be on the South Downs. So I haven't really done a lot of walking from home, but even we walk over the golf course in the evening, which of course is empty. And it's just a lovely time of day to walk anyway. I love the, you know, the late evening, and it's opened up a much more mystical, that was always there for me, but on a much greater level. Life is so much more unrushed.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm still doing the spiritual work that I like to do. You know, I'm still doing the ceremonies and the prayer time, and almost much more in joy than it was before. And dance. I mean, I danced under the full moon last night. That was fun. You know, that was wonderful. Well, yeah. I do that. I have done that anyway, but somehow it's just much more joyful, and it's what you want for everybody. But yeah, it's not everybody's thing.
So this is interesting, because I can say I am not doing much different than what I have done before. Yeah. Feel different. And I looked at that energy and I'm thinking, what is that? And I realized that this situation has given me permission, not that I needed it, but obviously has given me permission to do exactly what I want without having the projection of others that I have perceived, but also made up through my own judgment of myself by not doing what others are doing, because I'm not having a 9-to-5 job, and I'm not, you know, so it's almost like it's now, I've given myself permission now to just enjoy who and what I actually am.
Yeah, that word permission. Yeah.
And that was really interesting, because I thought, Jesus, I didn't know I needed that. That was so different. I'm so happy with this now.
And I would say you didn't need it, Martina, but I think that for all of us that you know, we were trying to be who we were, and we were doing that, but there's something about what has happened now that has sort of taken away any struggle that was ever in that. It's so much easier now to indulge yourself in yourself.
Yeah, the roles
in nature. And sorry, Laura?
Sorry to interrupt. The roles have gone. The role play most.
And the expectations that you have to be somewhere and be something. You know, it's just enough to be yourself. And it's much easier to be in that space now.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't think it's so much that we needed the permission, but there's some sort of an allowance. I think that actually the energy is almost supporting it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's fun to actually look at that and say, Jesus, you know, actually we need so little, don't we?
I know.
The other thing, isn't it? The other thing. Yeah.
And of course, Laura, you said it does open up the conversation with the multidimensional side, with the mystical side, if you wish, or the spiritual, whatever you want to call it, you know, because it just presents itself. You're sitting in the garden and all of a sudden the garden, you know, the tree starts talking to you, you know, or, you know,
absolutely.
Because
So
we probably have now, let's use permission again, by giving us the permission, or giving, let me speak for myself, but giving myself the permission, I've now also given permission to everything around me to start communicating to me, because I'm just much more present with it, because there is
yes, you're saying hello.
And that is obviously going to open up a new conversation that we will have too, because we work a lot along those lines and saying, okay, so what is the new, and what does it mean to call forth your mystical sides and your spiritual sides, if you wish, and your, you know, multidimensional, that's what we call it, you know. What does a multidimensionally integrated human being look like?
Sits outside and looks at the stars in the evening, and everyone's looking at the telly, and I'm outside, like under the willow tree, looking at the full moon, and just loving being there, loving being out. And I think before I even myself, even though I'm aware of very much if I'm taking responsibility for myself and my journey, I realised how much I was still governed by time. It's like, oh, it's 5 o'clock, I better get the dinner on. We don't live like that now. It will be when it will be, when we're hungry. Now, I didn't realise my own conditioning.
Yes.
And that shedding, that's just, you know, it's losing that every day.
Do you know what I heard today on, I don't know which news it was, there was a stargazer on, and he said, guys, this is now the opportunity. We have less pollution. We have no trails up there, the plains. Look into the stars and don't worry. Look into the skies and don't worry about, you don't need one of those telescopes. You can be inside, you can be outside, but actually connect with the stars. And I'm thinking, wow, that was a mainstream media, because this is going to make a huge difference. You know,
huge.
Sitting in the sun, allowing the sun to come into us, working with the stars. And we don't have, that's the good thing, you don't have to cognitively know what you're doing. You just sit there and you enjoy. I mean, I watched the moon yesterday and I thought, why am I so happy? My mouth is like, I'm thinking, why does this make me so happy just to look at the moon?
Just look at that. Or get in the sun. We've got the sun now so much more than we've had before. So go out and just sit in the sun. And hopefully people will do.
And that will have an impact on our energetic makeup, you know. So really, truly do expect every morning, wake up and you start being a different person. So who am I this morning? What am I going to do today? You know, that type of stuff. Because you will be. And then, of course, the dream world is going to kick in too and start creating a change in all these dynamics. So it's really powerful. And so isolation, yes, our cages are being rattled if you're on your own, if you're not. And what if that is a good thing?
Yeah, what if that shakes you up a bit?
Yes.
I think it is.
And the more the cage rattles, the more possibilities we have that the doors open and people fall out.
Yes.
Or swim out or whatever. What else comes up with that? How are we doing?
It's nearly 6:30.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
When did we start? At 5?
At
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Enough blah blah. Yes. Well, it was so fun. So
it was fun.
Ladies.
Yes, it was great.
Shall we leave it
Sorry?
Is there anything else we need to do?
Yeah, we can. I'm happy to leave with Martina. Is everybody else?
Happy to meet again. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Oh yeah, well,
there's loads.
Please do spread the word, because if we get more other people in, it's going to get more interesting, because, you know, the more people on, the more they can ask questions, and the more perspectives, the more truths we're going to get, the more we can trade, make some money.
The more unlimited points of view we can bring in.
Exactly, the more the better.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining me for this installment. And
Thank you.
Next week, Wednesday, 5 o'clock.
Lovely.
Okay, Martina. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Great.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Martina.
Bye. Bye.